Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and the cards I made for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. For those that aren't aware, the Color Throwdown Challenge, it's just a weekly challenge that's open to everyone. I will have a link to it in my blog post, which is linked directly below the video in the description box. And there's just a bunch of inspiration. You can play along. It just gets the brain thinking in different ways with color combos. So I did some ink smushing using spray stains. You can totally use inks for this instead. I've just been having fun with my spray stains more and more lately. So I did some ink smushing, some splattering, of course, some 3D embossing, all the fun things. So if you keep watching, I will show you guys how I made these cards. So I pulled out the Simon Says Stamp Buckeye Leaf Wafer Die. And I have some Canson XL watercolor paper. And I'm just trimming out my watercolor paper to the size of this leaf so that I can die cut it multiple times. I had a rough idea in my head when I started, and I was like, probably going to use 2 on the front of each card and then 1 on the inside. So we'll need 6. We're just going to go with that. You could use distressed watercolor paper for this, pretty much anything, really. So yeah, I just use my Canson XL, and then I die cut my leaves. You can also just do ink smushing on backgrounds and die cut afterwards. I've talked about this a lot in videos. I like die cutting first. It just gives me a little more... I'm not looking for, again, like perfection or control, because when it's ink smushing, you don't really have control. But it's nice to see where the inks are going. Plus, with any sort of dye like this, where it's like adding piercing detail, etc., the ink will kind of seep into those spots. And yeah, I just like die cutting first, but you can totally just do backgrounds, die cut afterwards. This is also a nice way when you're having a really rough time and not feeling very creative. Make some inky smushy backgrounds just for funsies. You know, even if they don't turn out the greatest sometimes, usually when you die cut from them, you can pick the best spots or they just look totally different. So I'm using spray stains to do my ink smushing. I've shown this a million times with inks, and you can still do, you can smush your distress inks or oxide inks, or you could use other water reactive inks, spray them with water, do the exact same thing. It is totally the possibilities. There's so many of them. I don't think I've actually done smushing with my sprays that I can think of. I might have. I have so many videos, I can't keep track. But I just wanted to. It is more messy with sprays, definitely, because spraying them onto my nonstick craft mat here, especially this red, it gets everywhere. I'm fine with that. Also, it's going to get all over your hands and fingers. I'll talk about that in a minute. Also, be careful of your clothing. They're called spray stains for a reason. I don't usually have too much trouble with the spray stains, but still, I'm just... I did have my apron on. I wasn't worried about my sleeves because I'm wearing like a really dark color, but they're messy, and I like it. You can wear gloves though. If you don't like getting ink on your fingers, you can totally wear gloves. That works. It's great. So anywho, I started with Fossilized Amber Distress Spray Stain. Sprayed it on my mat, had sprayed the water, did the smushing like I showed, and then I dried that layer. When you're doing ink smushing, you want to dry between layers, wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers. So if I left everything wet, you're just going to end up with just solid color, just mud, really, in the end. So if you want the splattery, fleckly, speckly bits that are like super fun, you dry between layers. So the second layer was Candied Apple, which that one, and because it's red. I've talked about red many times. Red just has a mind of its own, and it just likes to go everywhere. But I added the red layer, dried it, and then my final layer, or final color, because it wasn't my final layer, was Gathered Twigs. Because that was the colors for the Color Throwdown Challenge. And funny enough, this is one of the very few times I didn't even look at the inspiration photo that actually has the colors on it. And you guys will see that on the Color Throwdown Challenge blog if you click on over to it. But I didn't even look at that. I just looked at the colors, which is funny because they're right side by side. But honestly, I didn't until I was doing my editing. And I was like, oh, the inspo photo has leaves. Because I'm very literal usually with the inspiration photos for the challenges. It's just like, oh, it's got a cake on it. I'm going to put a cake on my card. You know, it's just the way my brain works. But I didn't even look at it. But the colors, of course, I was just like, leaves. That would be perfect. And then I saw the inspo photo, like I actually looked at it and I was like, oh. So maybe I was subconsciously just totally influenced, whatever. But techniques like this are really fun with leaves because there's just so much you can do. And I had so much fun making these. I love the way the colors were coming together. So I went back and did another layer with the Fossilized Amber. I added more Candied Apple. With Candied Apple, I was literally picking up with my fingers there and just kind of dabbing it here and there. And yeah, hands are covered. Looks like a crime scene, especially that red. Easiest way to clean inks, stains, all of that off the hands, a loofah and gentle hand soap. That's it. I've been talking about this. One of these days I'll just film it to prove it, but I didn't move anything. I went, stopped the filming, went upstairs, washed my hands with gentle hand soap and the loofah, took pretty much everything right off. You don't need anything harsh or crazy. You don't need bleach, any of that. Just gentle hand soap. And another option is if you're going to have a shower and you're washing your hair, that'll do the same thing. It's friction and gentle soap. That's all you need. So after I cleaned myself off, set aside all my die cuts, I did embossing onto some panels of Simon's Smooth White Cardstock, and I'm using the Mountainside Leaves 3D embossing folder. And with Simon's 3D embossing folders, I use my Spellbinders Platinum 6 with the original platform, and I have 2 metal shims, and then the folder and the cardstock. And I had sprayed the cardstock with water just on one side. I just spray it kind of on the back. It doesn't really matter, but it's just habit. And spraying the cardstock just softens the paper fibers so it embosses better. You always got to kind of experiment with whatever die cut machine you have. Don't force it. If it's not taking the sandwich, back it out and thin things down. For some people, they just need like a folded piece of cardstock. Some people have used the chipboard packaging that comes with the folder. I actually find for me that's too thick. So just for me, it's the platform and the 2 metal shims works perfectly. So I embossed those backgrounds, set them aside, and then I die cut scraps of Neenah Desert Storm cardstock with the CZ Design Scripty Hello wafer die. I used just the wafer die and not the outline. And the top layer I die cut from some of Simon's matte gold cardstock and adhered those layers together. And I just used craft tacky glue that I have in a little Gina K Precision bottle. And then my backgrounds, coming back to these, I trimmed these down to slightly smaller than what my A2 card bases will be. So I trimmed these down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. I just used my little guillotine trimmer, and they're curled a bit because they had been sprayed with water before I embossed them, but just bend it back. Or if they're really wonky sometimes, I'll actually run them right back through with the folder to, kind of flatten them out a little bit, but I just bent them back and they're fine. And then to adhere these leaves, I'm just using some thin foam squares to pop them up, give them a little bit of dimension, but not a whole lot of bulk. So I figured out kind of my layout, and then I just followed that on both of these card fronts. So I just popped the little foam squares into place and then adhered these directly to these card bases. And I didn't do any like ink blending, anything. I wanted the card bases to remain, or like the card panels to remain white. So these leaves like really pop on it. I love these leaves. I don't think I've used this BUCKEYE die cut leaf, although Simon has a ton of die cut leaves, and I love them. I love all of them. It's kind of like snowflakes. I know, I sound like a broken record, but really, can you have too many? I don't think so. Anyway. Got these popped into place. And then, of course, I'm going to add splatter because that's just what you do. So once these leaves are in place, I'm going to put these into my splat box. And I have my Gonzai Tombi Starry Colors. And I'd already added water to the gold one, the yellow gold, whatever it's called, the one I always use. Stuck water in there, let it sit for a minute. And then I swirl it up really good with my fan brush. And then I'm going to splatter these backgrounds, especially the leaves. It'll just give it that little extra something, and it ties it into what, that's why I use the matte gold cardstock for the sentiment. So swirl that in there, tap that on, and then add more. Can you have too much? No, not in my opinion. So added that splatter to these backgrounds, and then I'm going to let that dry. My card bases are more Neenah Desert Storm cardstock that I cut to 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2. So top folding A2 size cards. And the remaining leaves are going to go on the insides of the cards. And then I just grabbed a simple sentiment from the Cozy Autumn Hugs stamp set. This is the stamp set that comes in the November 2023 card kit. It is available on its own. I'll have links like I do to everything. And I just put the stamp onto an acrylic block and then stamped it onto the insides of the cards with VersaFine Claire Pinecone ink. And then I adhered the leaves into place with craft tacky glue. And then I just let that sit for a couple minutes till the glue had a chance to set. And then I'm going to flip these card bases over and then just trim off the bits that are hanging off the edge with my scissors, just using the edge of the card base as my little guide. And then for the card fronts, the splatter has now dried. So I'm going to flip those over and I'm going to put Simon's Big Mama foam tape on the back of these to, again, give it a little bit of dimension, but not a lot of bulk. So put that across the backs of all of these. And then once that's in place, I can peel off the backing and then pop these onto the card bases. And then once those are in place, to adhere the die cut sentiments, I'm just going to use the craft tacky glue again in my little precision bottle. And I'm going to adhere this right on top of the leaves. So I just trace the back of these die cuts with the glue, just like so. And then I'm going to press it into place. And then I'm going to repeat that on the second card. So once I've got those into place, technically we can always be done here. But of course I've got bling. This one I don't have a link for. This is one of my favorites. It was the Studio Cadia Dark Chocolate Pearls. They've been discontinued, or I just couldn't find a link for them, but I found similar ones, so I'll have a link to those in the description. But just little embellishments, you know. Gold would work really nice too. I thought about doing yellow, but I thought yellow would kind of compete a bit with the gold splatter and the gold sentiment. So red would have been nice too. Anyway, again, there's so many options. But I adhered those into place with just dabs of craft tacky glue, picking them up with my embellishment wand, pressing them into place. Once these are adhered, these cards are complete. So like I said in the intro, I will have a link below the video in the description box. And in my blog post that's linked below, I'll have a link to the Color Throwdown Challenge. In the blog post, I'll also have the photos, picture links to everything, all that info. I also, of course, always list all the supplies I used with links. That'll be in the description box below as well. So you just need to expand it if you are interested in any of that. I'll have links to my social medias, all those fun things. All of that, always in the description box below for you guys to check out. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting, telling the robot overlords you guys like what you're seeing. And subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.